for a lot of people, they may not have ever worked with or thought about why they might want a book agent. So I wondered if you could start and just let us know what a literary agent does and what your role is in traditional publishing.
Sure. Well, I often say that when you are birthing your first book, it's nothing short of birthing a baby. So you really want someone who can guide that process and who can be your partner. And so we work with a lot of first-time authors, and it's one of our great pleasures in navigating newcomers through the twisting, winding road of publishing. And so you really want an agent who can guide both the editorial and the business and really have their sights on your longer career. So when we take on authors, we're not just looking at their one-hit wonder, the first book they have, we're looking at them for over the course of their careers, and we are going to be with them as one would be in a marriage. Which means excellent communication, which means a shared vision that really begins at the editorial level. So in terms of, what our work looks like, a writer would come to us with a proposal, with a manuscript. We would talk to them about some changes we might want to see happen to make it market ready for our publishing relationships and for really what readers want to see. And that person usually is on board, sometimes not. And if we are on board together, we work together in a partnership. Literary agents take 15% in perpetuity of what they help develop. And we then hopefully go out and get you a book deal at the point we've perfected the editorial together, which means that when you're choosing an agent, you really want to be focused on what is their track record. Have they sold books successfully in the past to the kinds of publishers that I want to be associated with? Do they have the right relationships, which can often be hard especially if you're not based in New York, where publishing is centered. So it sort of begins with trust and chemistry. If you share that vision, if you have a good, authentic first conversation, then that agent will be sort of guiding the process, getting your book deal, hopefully acting as a strategist along the way, because all kinds of things come up, from cover art to foreign sales to audio contracts. I mean, there are all sorts of things that newcomers want education in. So in ways, we're like educators as well.
I want to dive into everything you just said. I think there are so many gold gems in there. And I just want to acknowledge my office cat, Principessa. She's decided to make an appearance here. Who knows? She might have a book in her as well. And so I want to really hit upon the idea of the relationship that you have with your book agent. I think that is really important and something that people often don't spend enough time thinking about when they think, okay, I need an agent because I want a traditional publisher, and they don't really think about anything except just that they know it's necessary. And so when someone is choosing an agent, what are some of your suggestions so that they do find that right marital partner?
Right. So maybe what I left out of my earlier definition is that an agent is primarily there to serve the interests of the author, to protect you at all stages of the process, really beginning with your contracts. But then, in helping you navigate and understand and saying, actually, if you have an online course that's doing really well, maybe we don't want this book to cannibalize your course. Maybe we want to think about how these things are complementary and not, sort of defeating one another. So the relationship, as I said, is really most important, to know that you can trust that person, have an advocate in that person, that's sort of the primary advocate on your team before you even get into the publishing relationship. So I think that, again, when you're looking to work with someone, know that it's a long-term relationship. Be aware of what that person's track record is, to the extent possible, what their relationships are, which is all evident on Publishers Marketplace. Like, how often are they doing deals, and what kinds of publishers are they working with, and what books have they worked on in the past? There are often, I should say here, that there are often times that an agent will have an interest in something that's not their specialty, but they have such a creative vision and such an excitement about what you're doing that you shouldn't rule that person out because they're not well known in that area or haven't worked with authors that you recognize. But you should make sure that you share that vision. So at Lucinda Literary, we're all about tough love. we're not there to be, necessarily we're there to root you on, but we're not there to give you sort of lip service for your ideas. We want to be really sort of tough skeptics about what you expect to face from the market on your idea, both from editors and readers. Has that answered the question about criteria to look for in an agent?
Yes, quite well. And another thing that you said just then that really stood out to me is you want to find someone that's passionately interested in your project.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've found before, sometimes when you just look at the numbers and somebody looks really good on paper, but when you get into a conversation, it feels like they're treating you like a number and not really excited about your vision. That can make a very unhappy project as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in terms of tough love, I wonder if you've ever had to give any outs to someone that just wasn't a fit for traditional publishing. What are some things that you think about or encourage your audience to think about when they're deciding if they should be pitching book agents or if they should go another route?
Yeah, that's such a good point. So the two reasons we see for self-publishing would be the first, which we encounter most often, which is that there's sort of a niche title for a smaller audience that the writer is working on. So that could be, someone who's writing a book for lawyers or someone who's writing a book. I wouldn't necessarily say for dog or cat lovers because that tends to be a hotter market at the moment. But it's something that if you've been building a blog in a particular vocation and you want to publish a book for that audience, it can be wiser to self-publish because when you self-publish, you've got the creative control, the financial control, you have all that autonomy, and there's not the necessity of getting a publisher involved. A publisher's primary function being that distribution, right? Being that they can get you into bookstores and globally and get your book everywhere, which of course is only half the battle. I'm sure we'll touch on that later. But that's where a self-publishing scenario makes most sense. That the why a publisher would be involved and is this book going to sell 50,000 copies? If that's not apparent to the writer, self-publishing is probably right for you. There's also on the other end of the spectrum, writers who have mega platforms. They have lots of audience members through their courses, through their Instagram or whatever it is. And even sometimes then we'll face skepticism from publishers that there's so much of an internally built machinery that there's not necessarily a hook for media to get interested. There's not a news hook or a sort of trend. There's not something that sort of signals that broader appeal beyond the self-publishing audience. So even that really high platform author sometimes can find more financial and creative benefit in self-publishing. I'd say for both, if you want to do it successfully, and because publishing is a long road and you may want to traditionally publish later, you've got to be prepared to launch nothing short of a small business to do it well. It's really, really tough. And you've got to line up the right jacket designer to the right editor to getting it loaded on Amazon, figuring out the distribution. That's all very tough to do. So, I have such admiration for those who self-publish. Of course, I see great benefits in going the traditional path, but it is prohibitive for many people.
Yeah, and I have a client right now who's finishing his first book, which is with a small publisher out of the UK. And he's already decided for his second book, he wants to self-publish it because he wants that creative control.
Yep.
They've given him a limit on how many graphic images can be in the book and a lot of other things. And like when it comes out, has to fit their publishing schedule more than it has to fit his marketing calendar. And he's not happy about that.
And that's a great point. I mean, I should also touch back and say that if you are wondering if there's a traditional route for you as a writer, you should have a conversation with an agent if you can get one, especially if you're in that position of having a mega audience, whether online or through speaking. I don't know what your author's platform is, but if you've been working on groundbreaking research, or you're affiliated with a prestigious institution, or you're on the speaking circuit, there are a lot of different ways we measure platform. If you think that traditional publishing could be an avenue for you, you shouldn't just go the self-publishing route, right? You should have a conversation with like one or two agents or publishers and see if that's a possibility. But I would just say, since everyone has a book in them and everyone wants to publish with a Random House or Simon Schuster, the best way to sort of assess whether that could be your path is to figure out what that wish list book is. Like, what does that look like? So am I writing the next You Are a Badass? Am I writing the next Dare to Lead? There's got to be a lookalike in the market. Otherwise, if you don't see anything that looks like you, there's probably a reason for that.
I love that you said that. And in fact, because I'm writing a book this summer about being a cat foster mom, which I do intend to self-publish because I just don't have the audience size that would be lucrative to a publisher. But over there on the bookcase across from me, I have facing out the covers of some best-selling books about cats that were published in the last few years to keep encouraging me. People want this content. So yeah, it's a good thing when you find books that are similar to the idea you have, because then you're demonstrating proof in the marketplace that people want what you're building. So I think it's incredibly smart.
And I have so many cat lovers in the family and rescue lovers. So we'll have to talk offline about that.
I would love to. In fact, I'm picking up a mom and her 5 newborn kittens today to foster.
Oh, how wonderful.
Yes, I'm excited. And so, mentioning lookalike titles, a great place that you can mention that is, of course, in a query letter, which is normally the first step in the process of engaging a literary agent. And one thing I even suggest my self-publishing authors to do is to do the deep thinking that you would need to do to create a query, because if any author can answer the questions that a query asks, they're going to be in a much better shape to market their book and have a savvy plan to get it out there. So what are some suggestions you have for query letters?
So many suggestions. So we, I don't know, for those of you watching this video interview, we do have a whole course called Get Signed. And I also run live workshops on this very topic, which is especially focused on the letter, because the letter is the conversation starter or stopper, right? Like, if you don't have a letter that presents these things in a concise and compelling way, you're not getting in the door with any agent or publisher. So the query letter is a total passion point for me. And to answer your question, there are, and without giving all of the secrets of the trade away, I would say that there's a lot of bad wisdom out there. So what we see quite a lot of, and I wish we saw less of, are the sort of very lengthy synopses, here, and it's like a sort of digression of, I'm not sure when I've read this paragraph what actually happens in the book, what the genre of the book is, what the book is about in a nutshell, in a sort of elevator pitch that is so critical for agents and editors to leave a project and be able to articulate that, who you are and why you're qualified to write this book. And then we mentioned lookalikes. So comps, is the word of the industry when we say, like, what does this comp to? Much like the movie business, it still is, very much done in board meetings with publishers. This is a Gone Girl meets, so it's this meets that. And you really want to signal that sort of best-selling potential. You don't want to be false about it, but you do want to get someone excited. And I think that in terms of query letters, that touches on another point, which is these letters need to feel personal to the recipient. We're all sort of inundated with slush. When we can tell that we're just getting slush to form letter, when no one's done the research, when someone's querying me about a mystery, I don't represent that, so why am I receiving this letter, versus someone who has taken the time to thoughtfully articulate why they might be a fit for my list, it's night and day. So, you do have to pass through several gatekeepers at an agency to even get read by the agents. Why not make it really simple and get those points out in front? So
I couldn't agree more. I helped an author one time on a query letter that got a response the very same day from the agent. And what we did there is we began the letter by referencing an article that had come out in Publishers Weekly. I think it was just a press release, but the agent was named on another title that had been successful that was similar to that author's book. And that made, I mean, I'm sure that made such a huge difference. I've never heard of that happening on the same day before. So
that is incredible. And I know I've seen some of the query letters you've told us, so I know that you do have a gift for this as well. And that what you're pointed to is incredibly important. It is sort of like writing a media press release in a way. You want it to be timely. You want it to feel personal to that, you know, a personal fit. So those things are really important, really important.
I couldn't agree more. And of course, the next step with the query letter would be the book proposal. And, you know, there are 400-page books written about how to write a book proposal. I mean, it can be an undertaking as big as a book itself. And it actually stops a lot of people from even trying, which is probably a healthy deterrent to people that aren't good fits for traditional publishing, trying to, you know, beat down the wall and come in anyway. When you're looking at a book proposal, I'm wondering, what are some things that really let you know you've got something you can work with?
So much like the letter, I love book proposals as well. I mean, I find they're really interesting roadmaps for what the book is going to unwind to be. And there's so much potential that that an agent can receive upon a proposal and actually see the longer vision and have a stake in shaping it. And an editor will then do the same. So much like the query letter, I need to know how this book fits on the shelf. So in that the book marketplace is incredibly crowded because you've got classics that, you know, were published and still selling, and then you've got new books being published every year. You really have to break out of the pack. So if I'm not leaving within the first 2 pages of a book proposal with a sense of what this book is about and how it differentiates from others like it, so it's that combination of what's popular, but also something new. So what does it comp to, but how does it break apart? I need that to be there more than anything else. It's the idea, or even the germs of a really crisp idea that I can then get in and work with if needed. Sometimes that's not needed. And then it's really who the author is. And there are a lot of ways to reflect expertise or to show commercial appeal. It's like writing a resume in that regard, right? Like you've got to self-promote a little bit to just show why you're qualified for people to hear from you and trust your expertise. And then it's just the writing gripping, is the writing terrific. So the best way for any kind of proposal to do this, from the self-help to the, you know, more narrative, is hit me with stories. You know, I want gripping stories that feel like fiction. I want to be immersed in the narrative as soon as I'm picking up that proposal, and I want to start flipping the pages and have even an element of suspense as to what happens next. What am I going to learn? What are you going to reveal? So things that feel really rote and boilerplate, and, you know, here's the overview and here's who I am. I like many other agents, I'm getting 10 of these a day. So how is this going to make me feel this is something new and special?
That's really so good. And I'm glad you mentioned within the first page or two, because a lot of times, and I think this is just a writing tick for writers that are not vastly experienced. The first thing you write may not be where the proposal or anything needs to actually begin. And so, and a lot of times, and I think this comes from bad training all the way back to the 5-paragraph essay, where you might put your best point at the end. You want to lead with the very best thing, because if you bury the most amazing part of your book on page 70, the agent's probably not going to get there. You've got to start with it.
Yes, the most sort of dramatic and memorable and relatable qualities are what you want to give. There's so much that needs to happen in those first critical couple of pages, and I completely understand how overwhelming that can be to a writer. But you're absolutely right, Cindy, that having so many writers begin by writing the full book, and the actual book they publish looks nothing like that, right? Like maybe the seeds were there, but they'll have to reverse engineer that into a book proposal. And it's an incredible branding messaging exercise, if nothing else, because you're getting really clear on what that book offers versus just writing. So much of free writing is catharsis, is written for oneself or for one's mom, right? So we've got to like separate the wheat from the chaff and just really focus on what's going to be new and appealing to the majority of readers out there who don't know you.
That's exactly right. Most people want to write a book not just to have something else to sell to their existing audience, but also to find new readers and grow their audience.
Yes.
100%. And you just mentioned something else that I think we should talk about. The idea of writing your book before you create your proposal versus after you create your proposal. And I'll also ask you, in case there's some misinformation out there, but what I've understood is that for memoirs, generally an agent will want to see a good polished draft. Whereas for a self-help or a nonfiction kind of information-led book, they may only want to see a proposal with some sample chapters. Can you tell me why that might be and if that's accurate?
That's such a good, and it is a question we get a lot, and I do understand there's a lot of confusing information out there. So as someone who is a self-declared proposal person, because I have a marketing background and I'm interested, the publishers I work with have strong sort of marketing interests, I prefer to see a proposal of everything that is nonfiction. So even for a memoir, unless the writing is so strong and you've basically handed me educated on a plate or uncanny valley, any number of the really popular memoirs today that are just so writing forward, voice forward, I'm going to want a proposal, because in the memoir category in particular, I need to know why this person is qualified to write the memoir. And that could be a really harrowing or otherworldly life experience, but I'm still going to be looking at that piece against where this fits in the market, what is the writing like? And so I'd like to have all of those ingredients as an agent to look at a proposal. With that said, if you are a writer by trade, we're working with an excellent ghostwriter, and you've written the memoir, it could be worth writing a really compelling query letter and then having some really polished sample chapters to send to agents who are interested. So nothing here should close doors for you. Like, you can really go either path. There may be agencies that are more rigid than mine. I'm about I don't care what path gets me to what's the saleable book. So either direction works for us at Lucinda Literary. Again, I prefer a proposal.
That is really good to know. And once someone is agented, then their book is published, right? Is that how it happens? Well, I think we would like for it to happen. I'll quickly tell you a brief story about a colleague of mine. I won't use his name in case he doesn't want me to, but when we were in graduate school, he got a literary agent, and we all treated him like he was already, as he did eventually become, a New York Times best-selling author.
Yes.
We thought it was done. There was nothing left but to make money. And after 2 years, that contract ended, and he still didn't have a book deal. And then that didn't stop him, though. He had found another agent that was interested if the one contract did complete as it did. And so he followed up with that person, and she got him a deal within 6 months. So, and now his fourth book is on pre-sale now. I'm so thrilled for him. Maybe you wouldn't care if I did say his name, but you can message me privately if you want to know who that author is. He's fantastic. But I just bring that up because after you get an agent, it's not over. I mean, in a way, it starts more work and another process. So tell us what that's like.
So that's a great point. And we work with a lot of second-time authors, those who have worked formerly with agents and then come to us looking for a shift in something new. Some of my favorite stories, you had earlier asked me about some of our client wins, are because I'm someone who likes a challenge, are authors who've come to us with full proposals or even books written that agents have gone out to the market with. They've received passes. They come to us and they're like, What are we doing wrong? I believe so
Mm.
much in this idea. And we'll see something, this is, again, not everyone, but if the author, if we see something, we will reshape it from title to, we'll go through it with a fine tooth comb. And there are two recent examples I'm thinking of where we sent this proposal out to publishers who had passed the last round with his previous agent. And now we're offering 6 times as much money, not realizing that they'd previously passed on the book with the form. So it's unbelievable how you can sort of repackage things. Again, that's our superpower. Like we come in to really partner with you and repackage with you. And then I'm thinking of another author example of ours who said, we had 20 passes before our agency entered the picture, and then went out and got the deal. So signing with a literary agent is a great sign. And I'm so happy for anyone in this audience who has done that. It is the beginning of your path to being traditionally published. But again, publishing being a long and winding road, the truth is that that's no guarantee of a sale. We all do this work on spec. We're the author and the agent, because we have such belief in you and your product. And so ideally that sells for, pays all kinds of dividends on your initial investment. Mm-hmm. But, sometimes it is the case. Now, at this point, Cindy, to be perfectly honest, I'm 15 years in this career. I'm not taking on things I can't sell. I mean, that's just not happened to me in years, but it did at the outset of my career because I didn't care what the platform was or what the, I wanted so badly to work with these writers and see them to market that I would just give it every ounce of my energy and being. But now at this stage of my career, I have the eye to sort of see this is something I can sell for X amount to these people. It's gotten down to a science.
That's brilliant.
Let's hope. Yeah.
Yeah, and you brought up another interesting point, because occasionally I will do research for a client and make a hot list for them of agents that I think might be worth their time to query. So I guess, I'm kind of playing matchmaker. Mm-hmm. And one thing I like to do is get a mix, because sometimes a new agent that's just starting their own agency and they've got previous experience in the field, so they wouldn't be without contacts, whatsoever. But at the same time, they're hungry and excited, that can maybe be a great fit. And then there can also be a ton of benefit from getting on somebody's list that is seasoned in the marketplace. But one thing you do want to watch out for there is, are they still enthusiastic about your project, or have you become a number?
Yes.
So yeah, it takes the whole package.
It does. And really the best case scenario for those writers for whom you're giving this hot list, which is such a wonderful thing that you do, by the way, as their ghostwriter, but is to encourage them to have as many conversations as they can, right? Because again, you're picking a partner, you're picking a life partner, potentially. So that young up and coming agent may have something to offer that the older, wiser, more seasoned person doesn't. And you should ask those questions. Are you going to be my primary contact? And what happens if this doesn't sell? And that's not to doubt the person you're speaking with. That's to just know the full picture. Again, we've very intentionally kept our agency at a mid-size. We've got a couple of other agents working with us. We're looking to hire another. We've intentionally kept it that way so we can be really hands-on with our clients and keep a pretty confined list. At the point where we were, considering joining a big agency, it was very much going to be a number scenario. So,
yeah, I admire your agency. By the way, I checked out your website very carefully and read the bios of everybody on your team, and you do have a lean operation. I can tell.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, I just feel so fortunate to be in business with these thought leaders from whom I'm learning something every day. I think you and I are very similar in that regard. We're learning from the people we work with. Mm-hmm. And I also, have over the years built a really loyal, wonderful team. And we all sort of bring something unique to the equation. And we've got Connor, who does children's fiction alongside the expert-driven books. We've got Jackie, who sort of brings a background in health and business and parenting journalism. So she's come in as an agent with us. It's a really terrific team. We're very devoted to our authors and to each other.
I love to hear that. And as we wrap up our conversation, I'd love to know what your dream project is now. Are there a few books and authors that you're on the lookout for?
Yes, I'm so happy you brought that up, because we are pivoting slightly, or my tastes are pivoting. I already said that I'm someone who likes a challenge. So I've sort of, I've built a reputation in doing the more typically self-help business book, right? That blend of those categories. And that can still be exciting to me. I certainly believe in those books that I've sold that are publishing and published, but I'm most interested now in something that doesn't look like a self-help book. So it could be one, like that message could be there. But if I see something in the title that's 6 things to do this or 10 ways to do that, I think a part of me is just looking for a new challenge beyond that. So I'm interested in, it could be a memoir sort of bend where lessons come out of the memoir. If there is an incredible business story, or as an entrepreneur, I identify with entrepreneurs. So if you've taken some crazy journey to reach some level of success and you have takeaways for other entrepreneurs, that's interesting to me. Again, if it feels like it hasn't been said before in quite the way that you're saying it. But I think what I'm most looking for, and I hope this is not too broad, is really great writing. I think we're now in the age, especially with the pandemic, of sort of, clickbait, news bites. Everything is short and punchy and grabbing for our attention. And when I sit in front of a Netflix, show about to binge for 2 hours, I think I'd rather be reading a book. And if I'm going to be reading a book, I want it to really feel like I'm learning something and it's touching me on a deep level, which is going to begin with the literary quality, and the author's style of writing. So that's a long way of answering. I'm looking for things by journalists, more narrative, memoirists, but really people who bring great writing to the table. And then I'm fairly sure that we can help with the idea. And the platform, if it's not existent in the proposal, if the idea and the writing are terrific enough, an audience will come out for that book. And I think publishers are thinking in the same way.
That is fabulous to know. And if someone wants to contact you or find out more about your agency, what's the best way to do that?
So it's lucindaliterary.com. And again, for those writers who are completely new to the process, I would go to lucindaliterary.com/workshops, which is where we have all of our live events and our course. It's just a great sort of primer into publishing generally. And then ideally, when you're setting out to query other agents, you'll be putting some of those things into practice rather than facing no response. So, yeah.
What a wonderful resource. Well, thank you so much. I can't wait to listen to this episode and take notes because there are so many gems here.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for doing this with me. And it sounds like you do really wonderful work for your authors. So it's so wonderful to meet you, Cindy.
Thank you, likewise. And for everyone viewing the Dr. Cindy Show, if you want more industry and leader interviews, just like the one with me and Lucinda now, make sure to subscribe and never miss an episode. Bye, everybody. Okay, I'm going to stop recording.